Thank you everyone that has joined, and welcome to the first online Astronomy for Mental Health facilitator session. I appreciate everyone that's here, and we'll see more people joining in as we go. So a moment, I'll introduce myself. I'm Dominic Virtue, so I work at the Office of Astronomy for Development, and my background is in social work and psychology. And over the last few years, I've had the privilege of working with the office and seeing how can we use astronomy and the inspirational potential around astronomy to really support mental health and well-being. So for today, what we're going to be going through is a more practical side of it, of how can you guide these short, safe, reflective sessions, and we'll be going through the various aspects around that. So before we begin, the cameras, you're welcome to switch them off or on. We're not going to really be interacting that much individually, just with the size of the group. We will use the Zoom polls. I have a poll in the beginning and at the end. There will be question and answer breaks where we'll mainly be using the chat, and then depending on how we're doing on time, we might ask a few people to unmute and have discussions around that. And I know that this is an online session about astronomy, which is always a little bit different from what you would ideally have of doing this under a beautiful night sky. But I will include some images about the night sky. And if you do have any windows or things around nearby, I encourage you to make use of those as well. Also, after the session, you will be getting a full guide that covers all the aspects that we're touching within this training. And because of that, it's not really necessary to make notes, but you are welcome to make notes. I am actually quickly going to share for you guys a little trailer of what that guide looks like. Okay. Is it sharing? Wait, it's not sharing the right one. Oh, no, it's not sharing. Okay. No problems, we'll leave that one. But afterwards, it's going to be a link to a webpage that we're updating as we update the materials, and it goes through almost like a self-led version of this training that we are going through today. So it will go through the various topics that we're going to be discussing and have practical activities. It's also just a nice resource to have, as all the data that you put into it is stored locally on your device. So later on, when we talk about having contacts ready or things like that, if you do use that web page, it will save those contacts so that you can always pull them up during your sessions. So as we start off, I would like you guys just to do a short pre-training poll, just to get an idea about the expectations and where everyone is coming from. So let me see. Yes, we will pull up the poll for you guys. Okay, so you guys should be seeing this poll in front of you, and we will just give about 3 minutes to complete this poll. You're welcome to continue working on it as I continue, but yeah, we appreciate if you guys could go through and submit your responses.
Dominic.
Yes, Troy.
There's someone in the chat who says they can't press the submit button. Do you maybe have suggestions
I
about that?
actually do not know why the submit button can't work. Let me quickly see if I try submit again. I'm not sure. Yeah, if the submit button isn't working, what I could suggest is the main thing is for the individual feedback, the last question. If they're willing, they can just copy that out and put it in the chat.
Okay, there's also another comment saying that it works fine. You just need to complete the whole form to get to the submit option.
Okay, so you need to select
Please
all
make
the...
sure that you answer 4 questions, otherwise you won't be able to submit.
Oh, thank you. Okay. Then I'm going to continue. Like I said, if you're still on the poll, you're welcome to complete that. But just to go through what we're going to be covering today, we're going to look a little bit around the framing of where this training is going to take us. And that is pretty much around this topics that we have here. So the mindset shift. We're going to look at the science behind why we think that astronomy is a useful tool for contributing to mental health and well-being. We'll have a question section specifically regarding the science and that entire section. And then we'll move into the more practicalities. So that's almost like the introduction. And then we start going into the scope and safety, the things that you need to consider if you're doing this with the public. So not necessarily your friends, but if you want to start facilitating this with others. We'll have a question section on that. And then our last part that we're going to really be looking at is a sequence. So this is just in case you'd like to facilitate an astronomy for mental health activity, but you're not sure where to start. It's just an example template of how you could go through this. And then right at the end, we're going to look at some of the activities. As mentioned, those will all be contained in the guide that you will receive afterwards. And just some discussion about how you come into this with your own life, your own experiences, and it is really something that you can make local to your context, but you can also make it your own, as it is really an individual type of thing that you would be facilitating with others. So what we are trying to do with the Astronomy for Mental Health is reflective facilitation. And this is not therapy. There's a clear boundary that we try and keep awareness of. And depending on who you do sessions with, sometimes things might come up that do cross that line. But within your own planning, within what you're trying to do, you're trying to create a safe environment, experience where people can enter and reflect. What we're not trying to do is we're not trying to have a therapy session where people disclose and share on traumas and things like that. That being said, if you personally do have the skill set and the training to do that, you're always welcome to adapt yours to go into that space. But that is not something that's covered in this training. In this training, we're looking at how can you facilitate really that reflection and safe space for your participants. And the night sky. So just looking at this picture, I mean, this is really what we have to work with. We have the entire night sky, sunrises, sunsets, the moon, the planets. We have this awe and wonder that astronomy provides. And it is something that is accessible for majority of us. And it does have a lot of potential. So I'm going to give everyone a chance just to look at this picture. And if you do have any windows around, even just looking out into nature, there is a deep connection within our psyche that whenever we're spending time in nature, looking at nature, appreciating the natural world around us, it does help us to restore some of the energy and focus that we require throughout the day. Now, astronomy gives us the setting, and what we do as facilitators is we can shape every person that enters that space. They've got full ownership of what they choose to share. And that's also included in if the person chooses not to share anything at all. As mentioned right in the beginning, it's not therapy, so we're not really pushing people to disclose or share anything specific. If they choose to share, it's up to them. And we'll talk about how do you handle situations where something might be shared that does cross over that line. But we're really building the space where people just feel comfortable and they know that they are in control of their own experience being led by us. So the mindset shift, it's really around that dialogue between, we're not providing therapy, we're providing reflection. We're also, when we're talking about the astronomy for mental health, often we're not going to be focused on education. We're not going to be offering a lecture. It's giving people the opportunity to experience the awe and beauty that astronomy offers. And through that, they will get these benefits. We will go into the science behind the benefits. And then also touching on the science is very important for us as facilitators to understand and keep up to date with if there's new developments in it. But for our participants, they don't need to be educated on why it works in order to experience the benefits of it. So there's only really three things that we can offer. We can offer the safe space, the self as context, and the fusion. I'm going to work through each of these. So the safe space, I mean, that is really the core of what we offer. It's a space where there's not going to be any assessment or treatment, and it's just a trusting environment where whoever we're working with can enter into. Now, the self as context and the fusion, that comes out of the framework that we have chosen. So as activity targeting mental health and well-being, we did still want to base it on a psychological framework, and we chose acceptance and commitment therapy. There's many reasons behind it, but it is a good fit for an approach where you might want to do activities that do not cross over into therapy and end at reflection and awareness. But it also opens the potential for, at a later stage, if someone does have the skills and background, that you can take it directly into therapy as well. So when we're talking about the self as context, we're starting to touch on, when we're doing these activities, what this astronomy container gives us is an opportunity for people to see that their experiences, the things in their life, the challenges, whatever it might be, it is things that they're experiencing. It isn't the person themselves. And it might sound silly at times, but it is that little bit of space between you are the person that is experiencing an emotion instead of being that emotion. It plays out in language. People would often say, I'm upset or frustrated. But even in language, if you have that space, what it signifies is you can see it as something external to yourself, and there's space to work around and choose how do you want to interact with this experience. It doesn't mean you can just get rid of it. Whatever is happening is still very real for the person, and it is there. But having that space, they can start figuring out different ways to approach this problem, different ways to deal or move it around, give it a new context where it doesn't overwhelm and take all of their attention away. Then the diffusion, it carries on from that. It's that shift from just being caught up in whatever is being experienced as this thing that's covering everything about you, your entire experience, as to it's something that you can actually shift to the side and you can see this scale and beauty of the universe, and you can reframe whatever you're going through without dismissing it. So that is what we can offer. We can offer a safe space where people can experience these naturally through what is happening. And now we'll move a bit into the science. And then, like I said, we will have a chance for questions and answers and discussion around that. So, as started off, what we're doing, it's never meant to replace care. It's never instead of care. It's really something that goes alongside what people are already doing. So a main motivation behind it is the global need for mental health interventions and support tools, things that assist with mental health and well-being. The statistics that I've pulled up, the ones that we often use, they are based on South African statistics, but they do carry over very closely to the global population. And what you see in these is there's a gap between people that experience mental health breakdown and having access to the care that they require. And that's really where we said there's a need to find these approaches and not to find an approach that substitutes the clinical care of it, but to have something that's accessible that can support the well-being and prevention of some of these breakdowns. So the gap being the reason to offer something, it's not saying that we're going to fulfill the treatment side of it, but we're making sure that we provide a tool that can assist and hopefully with the prevention. So currently where we're at, there's a lot of evidence for the work of nature in the daytime, but there's not a lot for the work at night. And a lot of the work that we've been basing our activities off is based on the research around daytime nature, naturescapes, green nature, blue nature, and environmental psychology. Then there's also ore science, which sits a bit on the side. But it's almost like the astronomy is in the middle. And we're very honest about that. And that is something that we are actively exploring. So we're involved with various universities and conducting various research projects where we can actually come up with the answer to, as astronomy sits in the same space, is it a similar, just as effective, more effective? And it's just an important thing to know for if people ask, we're not saying that it's necessarily a proven treatment, but we can base it on all the research that supports the aspects of it, saying the night sky still falls within all of that nature research. But the specific research on the nature at night is still being conducted. Now, the sky for what we're doing is definitely not a backdrop. It is a core part of the activity, and we have a biopsychosocial material view of it. Now, that's just a big view for saying, big word for saying that the setting that we create for our participants, it will touch on everything. I mean, there's the biological that they carry into it, the psychological that's also with them. Often the activities we do will be social, it will be with a group of people, and there's a real context. There's materials of who's hosting it, what's the weather like, what tools and materials are available. All of those things do play a role. Now, we are busy putting together a study to see exactly which parts of all of these lead to the most successful activities, and that we'll share as we get results. But so far, we can clearly say that one thing that comes through is having that safe space, non-judgmental environment. Now, like I said, what we can say is that the research underway, and we're testing not how it functions as a clinical treatment, but we're saying, what are these activities made of? What are the benefits that they have? How do they fit in within the other frameworks that are already at play? And I think that brings us to our first question section. So in the chat, we can have, if there's any questions specifically around the science, about the background, about the theories or frameworks that we base it on. And I think we'll do a chat, and we will potentially be able to do 2 people verbal responses as well. So if there are any questions, we're going to take about 5 to 6 minutes for this part. Please type in the chat. Okay, so I see the first one from Veronica, specific research published. Yes, we recently published our very own research that we've done. So Joyful shared that in the chat. So that is a study that is ongoing. And there are others as well. I don't have the one right on me. I'll pull it up. There's one from Christopher Barnes, where they do a lot of how do people relate to the night sky and what are the benefits on mental health from that. But their study almost looks like a broader interaction. So it's about the night sky connectedness and how repeated interaction with the night sky impacts on you. What are the qualifications to practice this? For what we're presenting today, there's no qualification because we keep that boundary of saying your intent of doing the sessions isn't therapy, it's experience. It is really set up specifically to be something that anyone in the public can implement and facilitate. Collaboration. So later at the end will have a little call to action. I encourage everyone to actually try out some of this facilitation. And then as the IAU, we're always interested to see how can we support people that are implementing in order to have better impact. What does the research say are the cases in which astronomy has the biggest benefits? So that is unfortunately the one where we can't yet say. I think the biggest one that comes to mind is one that's not yet published, but going to be published soon, also by Christopher Barnes, where they had school groups, daytime residential, and people that actually stayed overnight residential. And then the ones that had the nighttime component had a bigger impact and it persisted over a longer time. Aspects of diversity in this session. We won't specifically touch on it, but whenever you're facilitating your session, when it gets to the making it local part, that's where you really want to make it suitable for your audience. Let me see, where was I in the questions? Does it fit into, so the closest one, it would fit into the modality of, well, like CBT, it's because acceptance and commitment therapy falls within the third wave therapy, similar to CBT. So yes, it would fit into that treatment modality. And so far, the only ones that we've really looked at is stress, anxiety, and depression. And in future, we are hoping to collaborate on more specific mental health conditions, but those would take the form of a trial where we'd have to see which conditions are suitable for doing the protocol on. What do I think about the term dark sky? Yes, so dark sky can be intimidating. It is often good to rephrase it as starry sky or experiencing an outdoor event with others. It is very tricky to get away from dark sky because that is a lot of what is being offered. But yes, the stars and awe is what is inspiring. So I think that's a good point. Age groups. I always say ideally, adults are just easier to work with because you don't have ethical considerations. If you do want to work with children, that is very good. But if you can, then get the parents to actually come with the children, because then there's also, from our work, we've seen that doing these activities also helps for family cohesion. So then you can almost improve the well-being on two sides. They've got the experience of the awe and wonder, and they get to come together as a family. Currently, it's not focused on a specific group or audience. That would come down to, as you're planning your activity, how do you structure your own activity? But the group part is important. Most of the things we're doing is usually just better in a group. There's a lot of benefit in having a group. If you're doing it with individuals, they can still have the benefit, but they lose out on the social aspect and the social container, which has its own benefits. Okay, I'm going to do a few more and then we'll move on and hopefully come back to some of these. Horizon gazing, yes, we have. but we haven't studied that one yet, but it was very successful. What kind of meeting is this? So this is to go through the practicalities of, for those interested in facilitating these sessions, what to keep in mind, and giving a template of, if you're not sure where to start, a roadmap of how can you start. So it's almost like the first day induction training type training. Okay, I see there's a few more. I am going to have to get back to some of these. And thank you, everyone. Then, like I said, this is all about facilitating with others, and that brings with it scope and safety. It's the part that is not as glamorous as the awe and beauty and everything that we're going to be looking at, but it's the part that ensures that you can have a successful event and that everyone actually benefits from it and we're not accidentally doing some harm. So we're receiving people with real warmth. We're making sure that as they go through this experience, whatever they decide to share, whether it is something that's traumatic or not, we don't leave them alone to carry it. We come alongside them and we connect them to support if they need support. Now, we don't diagnose, we don't assess risk. The one that's very hard is we don't advise. Unfortunately, we are all people. We love to give advice and we want to see people succeed. But in these groups as a facilitator, that is not our role. We're facilitating the space. We are not actually trying to coach or advise them on how to deal with whatever they are sharing. And we also don't stand in for proper support. So a big part is having contacts ready. And we're going to touch on that in a little bit. So this is a tricky space because we're working with people, we're working with awe and beauty, we're working with reflection, but we're saying we don't want to do therapy. So we're already close to the edge. And often that is where things can go wrong. So what we would do is if someone becomes tearful, they say something deep, the first thing is we don't want to leave it alone. We want to acknowledge it. We want to sit with them if you can, if you have co-facilitators. Otherwise, you want to acknowledge it and say, you'll meet up with them afterwards. You want to hand over to a specific contact. And this is going to be coming up a lot in the following sections is if you're going to be facilitating with a group, especially the public, you want to make sure that you have some type of referral network ready, whether it is just a hotline people can freely access and call, or a specific person that would be able to help them with whatever comes up, someone trained within mental health. And then you want to try and remember if any of these things happen is to follow up privately away from the group. That is sometimes hard to do, but it maintains your credibility as the facilitator. Because even if you've not acknowledged, sometimes afterwards the person might disappear, but it's a good idea from your side just to try and see, can you follow up with them? Now, unless you are very qualified, we're definitely not going to suggest anything that might help them medically. We're not going to directly ask them about self-harm, trauma, anything like that, because regardless of what the response is, what would you be able to do with that if you're not properly equipped? And we're also not going to try and interpret their reaction. So, as clinicians, often you would ask about self-harm, it's good practice, but that is not, as a facilitator, something that you would step into. So one thing, if in a group something happens, an example of a grounding pivot, so something just to bring the group back, you've acknowledged the person, and now for the rest of the group, because they're aware of what is happening, you can say something like this: let us come back to what is here, the ground under our feet, the air on our skin, the sounds around us, and the sky above us. So this type of pivot is for your rest of the group. How do you just bring them back to the activity when you're moving on? Now, This is going to be a short activity of about a minute, and luckily everyone's on mute. No one can hear you. But if you have to think in your own words, what would you say to your group if someone shared something or someone started crying, it was acknowledged, but now the rest of the group's a little bit, well, naturally curious of what's happening there, but there's also everyone's having their own thoughts. What is a pivot that you imagine you could say to just get the group back focused on the activity? And yeah, this is just something for each individual to practice. It's not going to be something that anyone else is hearing. So you guys will have a minute to practice that. Okay. Okay. Thank you for everyone that tried out that activity. Then scope and safety, like I mentioned, a good thing is having some contacts ready. So at the very least, you always want to have your first one, which is crisis or emergency line. That is almost like a non-negotiable. Just it will help you a lot if you're working with the public, because in case of an emergency, it's often tricky to think of who you should get in touch with. Then the second one is the counseling or community service. That is a very good resource just to have so that you can provide someone that details and then they can decide whether they want to check in or not. And then the third one is more for you personally, a mentor or supervisor, someone that you can trust so that after the session, you can check in with them, say what went well, what didn't well. It's that person that will help guide you to grow as you develop within this process. And the best practice is always having these all ready beforehand. In the moment, it will be quite disruptive if you need to start looking for contact numbers and which ones are actually available. That also, when it comes to the counseling numbers, even if you find a toll-free number, I always encourage people try out that number yourself, just to make sure it is still actively running. And then just having all of those saved on your phone or at least written down, it gives you a lot of peace of mind when you're facilitating your sessions so that you know, regardless of what happens, there's a plan for who you can call, who you can reach out to. Now, this section is going to be followed by a break, but if there's any questions for this part, you guys can start typing them in, and I'm also going to extend this one because we're doing very good on time, so we can also go back to some of the questions from the previous science section. I see one that I might have missed earlier. How long do effects last? So it would really depend on the type of intervention. For the group that Christopher studied, where they have, I think it's about a week long, where they have night sessions, it looked like the effect is about 6 months. But that we can confirm once the full study is now through its peer review and published. Can you collaborate with the national health systems? Yes. They are often open to collaborations, but it would be a very clear delimitation that this is an activity or an event that is about reflection and it's not therapy. And they're usually open to collaborations, but when it comes to funding, they might not necessarily fund the activities. Okay, how do you measure impact without digital tools in low resource nonprofit organizations? So that is something that we are still working on. At the moment, what we've been using is the depression and anxiety scale, DAS-21, and we've also been using, there's some nature connectedness index and OAR scales. Of course, all of them are European in nature, so depending where you are, you might want to see if there's adapted and verified ones that are better suited to your group. But that is all tools that look at effect over time. So it's also if you're doing something over a few sessions. If you're doing something just for one session, I would say there's a few, they call them state measures. So you can look at state scales, like the IPANAS, those type of ones where it's more about how someone's feeling in the moment. That could give you some indication of measuring the impact that they would have. And then the one that's been the most useful for us is the framework of most significant change. So you could have questions to the group afterwards, pick a few people that are willing to have a short interview, and you can ask them questions like, what stood out for you? What was most significant? What was something unexpected? Those type of questions. The only thing to keep in mind is whenever you're interviewing someone, you'll get an idea of the impact, but also the people that usually agree to do the interview are people that had a good experience. So it is good if you can to try and keep an eye on people that might be a bit grumpy or didn't enjoy the experience and try and follow up on their feedback as well. Okay, and I see the comment of the discussions with a psychologist about managing emotions and carrying out activities that connect us with the human essence and natural environment. Yeah, that's very true. Thanks for sharing that. Online, we've done online sessions. There is definitely a benefit. So there's no denying that being in nature, being together with a group is always going to give you a bigger impact, just because there's a lot of factors that compound and play together. You've got the social, you've got the shared mastery, you've got a lot of things working together. But that doesn't mean that you need to limit it to in-person, for example, nighttime stargazing events. You can still get a lot of effect doing things online. I mean, some of our colleagues during the COVID lockdowns, for example, they did something as simple as printing out some of these James Webb pictures of deep space and having that within the hospitals. And they actually saw that for the clinicians and patients, that just having those posters throughout the wards and the hallways actually already had quite an effect on them. So definitely online, if that is what's available, I would say these sessions can be run online. And then it would be a lot more about the grounding exercises and reflecting. So we'll touch on some of those potential things that you could use in a bit. Okay, and I see Ori saying that they need to see it in action in order to be able to incorporate that. Definitely. I think it is always easier if you've seen something happening and just how it plays out. It does make it a lot easier to incorporate that. So hopefully at some point in the future, the idea is that this type of training is something that we're going to keep iterating on and improving. And then we can have like this library of self-led activities that people can go through. But hopefully some of those then would be recordings or illustrations of exactly how this would work with a group, so that you'd be able to see it in action. And yes, I see the one when you're designing experience, you're defining an audience. Yes, that is correct. how can I get involved in the research? Thank you, Joy, for answering that one. Okay, I see a few around that. Thank you. And I see Joy shared, actually forgot to mention this, I'll mention it again at the end. We do have a Discord community, and that is a good place for everyone that would like to stay in touch and also look for these potential collaborations. The Discord community is one of the places where it'll be easy to get in touch with not just us, but with others that have a similar interest. Nice, and I see Audrey from SADAG, the support network. Yes, that is very good. Mentioning that, it's almost, so the depression and anxiety group is one of the resources we often use to refer people to, but their approach is also partly what influenced how we structure our things of you're creating the safe space, but you're not advising and doing the therapy. You're letting the people experience it, and their support groups follow a similar structure. The feasibility within a planetarium, yes, we've done 2 sessions within a planetarium. A planetarium is actually very nice because you don't have to account for weather. So you don't have to worry about arranging an event, and specifically if you had stargazing or something planned and there's clouds or rain, a planetarium is very good. So if you do have access or connection with a planetarium, it is very well suited for these type of activities, especially children. Okay, so I see, hoping I'm saying Miriam's name correctly. How can I help people, especially children, especially considering a country that's recently been affected by war? That is a very large one. So with children, what's previously helped is approaching it from that awe and curiosity side and trying to make it playful. And then depending on the group, you can start later involving the stories about how, even though they might be spatially separated from families, friends, relatives, they're still all under the same sky. It is, however, recommended that if you're going to be working with children, especially if they're carrying these type of traumas, I would say try involve mental health professionals within the group, because they would really benefit from that, taking it further into a bit more of the therapeutic sense. How can solar eclipses be used in the context of facilitating these sessions? Solar eclipses are awesome because they're often well advertised and there's a lot of interest in them, and it gets a lot of people together for a short activity. So usually the easiest way to do it is, if you know a group that's already connecting, trying to see if you can connect in with them, and then proposing that maybe you just share a little bit of a story about when they're looking at this, what is something they can think about, a question they can ask themselves, or a type of reflection they can do. And sorry if I'm missing some, I'm scrolling through the chat. So yeah, I apologize if I missed some of the questions. Okay, and I see James is saying the view from above. Yes, so view from above, also Carl Sagan's pale blue dot, all of those type of reflections, similar idea. It gives you that thing to reflect on while going through the activity, and that's very beneficial.
Dominic, there's
Yes.
actually 2 questions that were similar that has to do with religion. Maybe you want to touch on that. So there's one that I'm seeing at the moment that says, when discussing mental health, particularly in reflective facilitation sessions, topics of religion, faith, or God frequently emerge. These topics can sometimes seem at odds with scientific frameworks, making them highly sensitive to navigate. How have you encountered this in your practice? And if so, what is the most professional yet empathetic way to address it? So there was also something similar that asked about religion as well. So maybe you want to touch on that?
Yeah, no, that's a very good point. Religion is always a sensitive topic because it's something people hold very dear to themselves, and just the fact that they would share it in a group, we would want to definitely acknowledge it. And the thing is, we're not judging, so we want to make sure that you convey that warmth and empathy. So usually it comes up with, in my sessions that I've had, it's a lot around the creation or what they're actually looking at and how everything came to be, or how a specific deity would have put things in place. And the best way to approach it is, as an individual, try to be as non-judgmental as possible. Even if it's not a view that you necessarily agree with, you're taking it as this is something that they're holding dear to them. And how can you acknowledge what they're saying, not necessarily accept it because you might have a different view. You're acknowledging it. You don't have to give it credibility, but you are saying that from your viewpoint, if you're from the very strict scientific side, you can say, okay, this is how you see it from the science. The science is constantly changing. We're discovering new things. If you're from the religious side, you can say that. But what we're not trying to do is we're not trying to say, well, this is my view in like a confrontational way. Because in a group, you might also have a few people mixed religion. You want to be very careful how you acknowledge it or how you respond to it. So usually if it's a small group, it is a bit easier. If it's a large group, sometimes the group members would actually want to start a dialogue around it. So it's good if you can catch it quickly, you can acknowledge it, and you can even, a good place if you want like a neutral territory to take it, is when religion comes up, you can link it to cultural astronomy, and you can say how various religions and various cultures over the ages have made use of astronomy and how it's played such a big role, and especially for different religions, how they use it for different ceremonies. So you can approach it in that neutral tone. On the other hand, if you have a group that has a shared religion and you also have the same religion, then it's perfectly fine to use this as an opportunity to explore deeper the faith of that religion within the activity, because that would also then add to the benefit that they draw from it. Okay, I'm skipping quite a few. I'm going to let Joy remind me of some of the questions. There will be more discussion at the end as well. So I'm skipping right to the end for now. I'm seeing, will we share and upload to YouTube? Yes, we'll upload the recording to YouTube, and the slides and the training guide I will share with everyone on email as well, because we're also going to see if we can send through a short evaluation form at the end, because we really appreciate everyone joining for this first run of this training, and we want to continue improving it. The idea being, this is the type of facilitator training that we would want to run every couple of months, to try and get as many people talking about the concept, but also actually facilitating these type of sessions. Okay, I am going to let everyone have their break. So I encourage everyone, we've been sitting for a while, so maybe just get up, do a little bit of a stretch, and we'll meet back here in about 3 minutes. Okay, let's give everyone about 20 seconds or so to get back, and then we will continue. And yes, let me send an email here for someone asking for the email address. We will be sharing everything, the materials by email for everyone that's registered, because I know a lot of people also registered might not be able to join this session live. Okay, I think most people would have had a chance to get back. So now we're moving into the practicality. If you were to facilitate this, you're not sure where to start, what's just a short, reliable structure that you can use? So the nice thing is you're going to already have your big part, which is the number 2, the cosmic hook. Astronomy really has this awe and beauty where we don't have to worry about coming up with a hook to get people involved or get people to attend. That is already going to be there. So what we're really going to focus on is your arrival and reflection. Now, when the people arrive, they all come from different contexts, different backgrounds. So it's a good idea to have some type of grounding exercise just to help them land and be more present in what is happening. It's also good to do it at arrival, as it sets the tone for this activity that you're going to be doing, and it opens this door to your final step, which is the reflection. Now, with the arrival, in the materials we'll share, there's a lot of different ones you can do. We've recently been playing around with some cyclic breathing, for example, which is one of the ones that have been more studied, but there's a lot of different ones, and I'll go through a few now. I used to do the box breathing because it's an easy one to remember. You imagine a little square box, and then you'll breathe in, hold, breathe out, hold, and you'll go through cycles of that just for a little bit to get people to settle. The only reason I moved away from that one is because I had one person saying how the holding phase of the breath exercise actually makes them feel anxious again. And that is the physiological activation of whenever we're holding our breath. So we've switched that now for what is called cyclic breathing. So basically, it's just you take a deep breath in, and then at the end of your breath in, you take a little another like top up breath, and then you breathe out. And you can try and make it like a sigh if you want. And the idea is you do your in breath, your little top up breath, and then your breath out is more or less twice the length of the breath that you took in. That is one of the easiest grounding things you can do because it doesn't really ask anything of your participants. It's really just a nice, welcoming activity that's quick to do. They can do it for as many breaths as they like. And I didn't even know we can draw on the screen. Someone made a nice scribble for us. It's an activity that will allow people to just settle. Another one that works well is any activity where you go from outside to inside. And what I mean by that is you can start outside, asking people from wherever you are, the room, the area, look around, see one object that you can identify and name that object. And the reason that you ask them to name it is just to have them do the full activity and not just gaze around like an automatic gaze. You want to look, identify, and name. Then you bring it closer. You say where you are, what is one sound that you can hear, and name that sound. And then you can go through all the senses if you want, but if you want to do a quick one, then the next step would be on your body. What is one sensation you can feel? So the clothes on your skin, the temperature around you, your feet on the floor. And then you bring it internally. What is one emotion or sensation that you're feeling at this moment? And can you name that emotion or sensation? So all of those are examples of your arrival. It is a short activity, easy for people to engage in, and just gets them to be present and part of what you're going to be doing next, which is your cosmic hook. The cosmic hook, by definition, will be whatever you set out your event to be. Is it going to be a moon watching, sunset, sunrise, looking at the stars? If it's online, is there a specific thing that you guys are going to be discussing or reflecting around? That is going to be your cosmic hook. With your cosmic hook, depending what you pick, then usually there's lots of stories or narratives that are easy to say. Some of them sound very cliche, some of them more profound. For example, the one we've got here is this light might have been traveling for hundreds of years to reach your eyes in this exact moment. It's one often used, and it can be used in a variety of settings. And now when we move to your final one, the reflect. If you are getting started in facilitating these sessions, you don't have to go into the reflection stage. Your participants will already have the benefit of being within this awe-inspiring or whatever activity it is. The reflecting is just, if you want to guide it a bit more, you go into the reflecting step, which is usually you'll have one clear question. You don't want to have it like a list of things because it's something that you want them to carry with them and think about. The one I have here is actually a bit without context. So it might be a bit strange to look at it like that, but it says, you are the sky that is holding this moment. What does it feel like? I realize looking at it now, that one needs a little bit more framing. So if you picture the night sky that you're looking at, the sky is just there. It is space. As cliche as it sounds, the space is there. In that sky, you get the clouds, the stars, everything that's moving through, but the sky is just there. So it is the container. And that is similar to you as an individual. You are the sky in this scenario, and your experiences, your emotions, they are all the things that are filling that sky, whether it be thunderstorms or bright stars. You are the one that's containing it, and the rest are all things that are almost like transient. They're coming in and going out. And that's just an example of a reflection type question that you would ask. We do have resources for some stories that you could read through of narratives based on acceptance and commitment therapy. I am hoping to update it at some point with more cultural specific star lore and stories. But that is exactly where all of that fits in. It's what fact, what story, what narrative, what can you bring out that is something that just prompts people to think and reflect a little bit. So, as I mentioned, in this example of you are the sky that is holding this moment, and what does it feel like? You're not necessarily asking them to share. It's just giving them that silence and space to reflect. So whatever your reflection question would be, you could put it there, and then you'd allow people to sit with that question. Now, this is another activity that we're going to allow you all to do. And I'm not going to give it a lot of time because I know it's tricky in this setting. So it'll be a short activity. Yes, Joy.
Maybe before you go to the activity, I think this question was specific to the previous slide saying, have you worked with autistic people and people with alexithymia or poor interoception? So I think that...
That's a good question. No, we have not yet. The closest, technically, I've done activities where there were autistic participants, but they weren't the target audience. So we've done sessions at one of our community mental health clinics where they have a housing section, and it's all these patients that don't necessarily have any safe harbors to go to, so they live there. They do about 300 patients that stay there throughout their lifetime. And they've got, actually, I shouldn't say patients, because they're not patients. They're people that live there. They've got people living there from about 7 years old. And I think last time I was there was the birthday of someone that was turning in their 70s. So it's a broad range. And there were some autistic people. So with them, we actually did more like artistic expression, and we allowed all of them to paint and design these exoplanets, because we don't know what exoplanets look like. They can just use their imagination and do this more practical engaged activity where they would paint and color, and that would be their expression of what they imagine this would look like. So I would say for those type of audiences, you would really try and adapt it, and also see what is your functional age that you could work with. And again, with that group, I would say I would not go into the reflection, because why are you going to go into an activity that would maybe make them feel uncomfortable, or feel like they're not understanding what you're trying to do with them? So yeah, I would say look at more tangible art-based activities, or cathartic expressive activities like clay work or anything like that. Also see there's a question here about have we worked with people in jails? No, not yet. That is something that, as we get opportunities to collaborate, I would love to. And ideally, we would actually get others that are interested and already have access, and how can we support them to facilitate this within those settings. Okay. Let me just jump back here. So while I scan through some of the questions and answer section in the chat, just for about a minute, try imagine that you're now doing this. What would you like your arrival grounding thing to be? Ideally, if you can find the words, try talk through it just to see what feels right, what feels awkward. And then also just try and think about what's your ideal activity. Is it stargazing, sunset? What would it be? And the idea around this is just to see, initially when you start trying this out, it does feel very awkward. And especially you need to give people the silence to actually breathe and think about it. But for you as a facilitator, the silence often feels like you need to fill it, and you need to start getting comfortable with that silence. Oh, and I see Jane Cock mentions interoceptive awareness and mindfulness. And yes, so I haven't really touched on that. But part of the reason that we picked acceptance and commitment therapy as the framework that we're basing a lot of the activities around is because it approaches things through a lot of present moment awareness and mindfulness. So a lot of the activities is how can you get people to become more aware, become more present, and in doing so, you give them the option to choose where do they want to take their focus and energy, and what actions do they want to take. Okay, and I see Maria's asking, how can I start the first sentence? Yeah, so after you've like welcomed everyone, you've introduced yourself, then you can say, you actually give a very good example there is, let's take a moment to connect with our senses. Oh, the one thing I did leave out is you always want to give your participants the opportunity. So you can just say, we're going to be doing this activity. You're welcome. If you don't want to do it, you're welcome to just look around. Something you want to give them another option, so that if they don't want to do the meditation or the grounding exercise, you're just giving them almost like the permission that they don't have to try it if they don't want to. But yeah, your examples are really good. So you're going to say, like, let's get in touch with our senses. And then you can just go through the 5 senses if you want. Your touch, sight, smell, hearing, and feeling. Okay, and then I see some other people connecting up. That's awesome. Okay. So we're back to our little picture of the night sky. And it's just that reminder of you'll have your arrival. Your setting or activity that you've chosen will already give you the hook. And then the reflection is something that you can choose to engage with. And use the silences. So the silences is where a lot of the work is actually happening for the people that are attending or going through the event. They need those silences. So you don't want to fill the silences just with more instructions or information. And that leads into the running out of words. That is the curriculum. So as you practice, you'll run out of words, and that's perfectly normal. That's why you practice these type of things. You practice these first sentences of what would you say to the group. You repeat them. That's how you learn them. But then you also want to be comfortable with the silence. And also remember that the people are going to be there for the experience. So you don't have to be too harsh on yourself. Even if you forget words, even if you forget things, they are still going to be doing the activity. So it's not as much about what you're going to be saying to them. As long as you've set up your activity, they're going to be engaging with that as well. So even if you forget like large parts of what you wanted to tell them, they will engage with what they're doing. Now, this one opens up just another question section. So this one is around if you're imagining your arrival and how you would approach your group. You can type into the chat if you have any questions about that or about this entire section. And then let me just check out time. Yeah, we're still good on time. This is not going to be a long question section, so I'll give this one about 3 minutes. Okay, and I see Jane Cox just commenting on the treatment modalities. So we mentioned acceptance and commitment therapy, and then she mentions DBT, which is dialect behavioral therapy, and it does really fit in well with that as well. So that's often referred to as talking therapy, where you would go through stories and narratives and talking through. Okay, no, I didn't actually, Christine. Thanks for putting that in again. That I mentioned that I answered the question about places without dark sky, light polluted cities. What should they do? So those are ones where, unfortunately, it is a bit more limiting, but you have a lot of options. So I would say for those, usually the sunset, sunrise activities are a lot more profound. Light pollution, of course, plays a role. If there's a lot of light, you wouldn't even necessarily do the sunrise or sunset in a profound way. That is where I would say that is a perfect situation where your natural environment doesn't really give a conducive space. So if you can, it would be ideal to then look at what planetariums or other places do you have access to. Okay, and you guys are welcome to keep questions coming. I'm going to go to our next slide. So this almost carries over to what we've been talking about is how do you get the people to arrive? And these are things that you would get your full set of activities in the training materials that we'll share afterwards. So some of them that we'll be sharing is currently your 5 sense landing. We went through some examples of that. We talked through the sky within. We didn't really touch on placing thoughts in the sky because that one is a little bit more tricky. It can almost cross over into the therapy space, but it is a nice activity. It's one where there's a lot of ways to do it, but you can basically imagine that whatever thoughts you're caught up in or things like that, how can you start placing those in the sky, and then you can place them as clouds or different things and see them drift away. So that one, in the training materials, it would walk you through that one. And similarly, pale blue dot reflection, it's a very good one. It's a well-known one where we look at the pale blue dot, which is this image, and Carl Sagan had this quote around it of how everything, every nation, every language, everything's all together on this pale little fragile blue dot, and that is Earth as you look from it from space. That is also a very good one for the question of, without the skies and things, what do you do? You can use some of these images from space, especially the more recent space missions. We've got James Webb. There's some really nice accessible images that you can then use as the awe and cosmical component, where you would look at these images and then just discuss and imagine through those images. And finding your guiding stars, that is very much acceptance and commitment therapy based activity, where it works on just trying to become aware of what are the things that are important for you, what are your values, what are your goals, how are goals and values a bit separate, but all the things that you're doing helping you actually move towards the things that you value, or are they help making you drift away from the things that you value? So it's quite a deep, reflective one that you can do with a group if the group is very settled. And by that, I mean they've done the activity and they're very open to actually having these deeper discussions. Now, I listed them in this order because the easiest ones are first. They're the easiest ones, lowest barrier to entry, can do it with any group. And then the last one is the hardest one to do because it takes a lot more from you to explain and facilitate how do they actually identify these things and what do they do with this information. So that is the idea behind this arc of 5 and those activities, like I mentioned, that you'll get a little walkthrough guide in that information we share. Now, a very important part is we don't need the perfect sky. You just need enough sky to look up to together. And I know we mentioned that a lot of this can be done as an individual, but as mentioned earlier, the together part really does add a lot to it. So whenever you are planning this, if there is the potential for having it in a group, we all have this fundamental human need of connection and actually seeing and feeling seen by others around us. And this is really where astronomy, all of these activities we are engaging with these celestial objects, it's a very non-confrontational way where you can get people to come together, connect around this shared experience without having to feel exposed or vulnerable. So some examples we give here is you can look at the moon, any visible planet, and then we go into, if you have to, just use a rooftop, see what you can see, a courtyard, a window, and then your artificial ways of actually seeing these things, projected sky, planetariums, virtual reality. You've got a lot of various opportunities to still see it. It's almost just like they go into smaller and smaller groups, with virtual reality being a very much individual activity. And as we're almost drawing to the end of our training, I would really like to encourage everyone to think about a tonight mission. So a name of someone that you'd like to do one of these simple activities with, a time when it will happen, and a place. And the idea behind this is really just to give you that kickstart to do your first one, see how it goes, try out some of these things. And then also, if you're willing to share us some feedback of how it went, what you think could have gone better, what you think we could have put in this training to prepare you more for exactly this, your tonight mission. What can we do to make it easier for you to do this first step? So with that, I'm going to open up the post-training poll, which is just going to ask a few questions about how the training went, what you think that we can improve. And then after that poll, we'll move into a question and answer section before we wrap up. So for all of those that are willing to answer the poll, I will give this one about 5 minutes. So for those that are not interested in doing the poll, it's a good opportunity to maybe get a 5-minute stretch. Okay, thank you for everyone that's completed our poll. And then, as mentioned, things that will be coming your way is through the email, we'll share the link to the training guide, which is currently on GitHub. It's a live link, so as we update the materials, it will automatically update. Anything that you put on that guide is stored locally on your device, so you don't have to worry about any information being shared around. We'll share a short survey for those that are willing to just give us some additional feedback beyond what this poll captured. And then the third one is actually from you guys as participants. If you do try these sessions, please share your experiences with us. And also, if you have ideas about collaborations or activities that you'd like us to get involved with, please reach out. We're always very happy to get in touch and see how can we collaborate, support, and create these type of resources together. And that is the end of our training. We'll continue with our questions and answers for about another 10 minutes, but for all of those that would like to leave, thank you so much for joining, and I hope that you have a wonderful rest of your day. Okay, I lost my chat window for a little bit. I found it again. Let me see. Okay, so I see, Agata, you're asking about the research and prior research papers. Let me actually see if I can. I'm going to check for you with EndNote if I can share my library.
While you're looking for that, Dominic, there was also a question about at what early age would you recommend doing activities revolving around mental health and astronomy / sky
So,
appreciation?
being based off acceptance and commitment therapy, there's actually a lot of research of how even for children as young as 4 to 6 years old, if you're doing some of these activities, it really does benefit them as well, because it starts giving them this framework of how you can use different environments and things to help you emotionally regulate. But it also starts giving you the tools for thinking through your emotions as not being you, being separate from you. Of course, that only happens fully much later in developmental stages, but it starts setting that foundation for self-regulation and expression. So yeah, you can do it with quite young children actually. Already from about like 6, I would say, is realistic. But again, I would say doing it with children, it's really about getting the parents actually involved, because that's where the most benefit would come, is as a family unit, normalizing, talking about mental health, talking about the needs and challenges, because that's like their primary support structure. So if you can ingrain in a family that it's normal to talk about the challenges and things being faced, that would probably have the biggest effect on the children actually.
And then there was one saying, what are the qualifications needed to practice this?
Thank you. So that one came up earlier as well. So the way that it's structured at the moment, there's no qualification needed, because it's this individual facilitation of an experience. So what you bring into it is your own history and skills. If you know a lot about astronomy, then you can, of course, add extra aspects about the educational side of it, or sharing of things that you enjoy and value. But even with no astronomy knowledge, you can still facilitate these events where it's just a joint collective of getting people together to just experience the night sky and enjoy its beauty. And that's all you need. So yeah, luckily you don't need any qualification. And an important thing is just to emphasize again, if you're going to be working with a group that is not family and friends, but a group outside of your network, is try to always have a referral ready, so that if anyone does actually see that this triggers something or brings up some really deep and uncomfortable emotions, something like that, that you already have a contact or a connection that you can share with them that will be able to support them. On the question of the prior research papers, I am not seeing how to share my EndNote library. But what I will do is I'll see if I can just save it and send it with the email to everyone with all the resources and things. Otherwise, on the website of the OAD, I do think I did make a short literature review about a year ago, just summarizing some of the papers that we've used and what aspects of those papers that we actually took out of those studies. So I'll see if I can find that and add that as well. And then thank you for everyone sharing the thanks and experiences of engaging with the night sky. Thanks, Joy, for sharing the Discord details. Okay, I think that is where we're going to end it for today. Oh, I see Monica's asking, can you expand more on the awareness of awe and exploring it with an audience? Let me just read the full one. Okay, so it's about, if I understand correctly, a lot of these inspirational aspects, and especially when you're talking about the scale of the universe, the all of those type of things, it can also be perceived in a negative way. So it might, for instance, make someone feel that in this giant scale of the universe, instead of the expected response of my problems and things might not be as big as I first imagined, some people might interpret it as I am insignificant and all these other things are so huge. That does happen. So that's when instead of the awe-inspiring, it becomes almost like this existential crisis that is being worked through. Firstly, that's where it's good if you have those referrals that you can link them with. But then also how we've dealt with it previously is having that honest conversation of, this is how it's being interpreted, but that's exactly why, if you're thinking about how in this huge thing, you're only here for maybe the slither of time, or you're in the specific space, that adds value to it, knowing that it's not going to go on forever. So whatever you're doing, it has some meaning. It has an impact on those around you. So you're trying to reframe it into the positive. But that does come up, and yeah, it's one of those situations where it is useful to then either have someone on the team that can deal with it directly, or having those contacts ready, because yeah, unfortunately not everyone experiences the sky and the dark in the same way. I hope that did answer the question of Monica. Okay. Thank you, everyone. And as mentioned, please, you can join the community and you can reach out on email. We'll be very glad to hear from all of you. And sorry, Albert. So I see Albert Forson is saying that there's a course that we've released on OpenLearn, which covers the astronomy for mental health. And he says he cannot get the progress over 79%. I'm not sure exactly what it was. I know previously, some of them were linked as you had to complete a unit before you could continue or get the completion. But we have since removed all of those. So now none of them have a sequential requirement anymore. So it might mean that you would just have to click through each of them and just click next, next, next. So it runs through it again. And that way you can get through it. Let me quickly share. Can I share my browser? How do I share my entire screen? Oh, wait, actually, this one should work. Let's just make it not full screen. Okay, I'll let Joy pull up the Open Learn one, actually. I want to show you guys the index. So as I mentioned, I'll be sharing with you guys the training guide. And at the moment, this is what it looks like. So the training guide just goes through what we talked about today. It has our little mind shift, science and things. And then you can go through the modules. It has some questions that it asks you and you run through them. And if you want, you can mark them as complete. It locally saves your progress. It also links to some of the activities and tools. Those ones we mentioned, the landing, pale blue dot, all of those. It has a little checklist for things that you can keep in mind when you're setting up your sessions, your own little reflections of how your session went. But what's also nice about it is somewhere it does have some other resources. Oh, here. So under Toolkit, it has a little resource library just of some of our previous things. So the project page, a reference booklet full of stories that you could go through with a group, and our guidelines that we've previously made that are set up for if you're planning to do a larger project, what are some of the things that you can consider? And yeah, it also goes through some of the things we talked about, the self as context, the fusion, just in plain language. So these are all things that will be shared with you guys. Okay, thank you, Joy, for sharing that course. And yeah, let me actually copy this one out because I'll send it on the email, but in case anyone misses it, this is the link to that facilitator training page.
I sent it via the mental health website, which makes it easier for them to access everything else on our website. So
Perfect.
under our
Thanks,
resource
Joy.
on the mental health website.
Perfect. Okay, everyone. It was amazing spending the afternoon with you guys, and I hope everyone has a great time. Bye, everyone.